Hello, welcome. Today I'm talking about a huge topic relating to health anxiety. This is a big one. This is a habit I used to do for a long time while I was suffering from health anxiety. It's checking on your symptoms, checking on that mole, checking on that skin discoloration, checking on the heartbeat, checking on the pain the body's at, the body ache, checking on the vein, whatever it is. It's debilitating. It makes you think you're going crazy. But what's really going on here? Well, you're acting out this notion that, well, what's going on is unknown and that you're figuring it out. You're a problem solver in some sense. You're like Sherlock Holmes trying to figure out the mystery of what's going on within the body. Why do you feel a certain way? So let's talk about checking. What's behind checking? But first, I think let's define health anxiety. Health anxiety is this constant rumination and obsession over one's health. Now you wake up, you check in on yourself. You're not feeling right, you feel all these strange symptoms. What's really going on here? And then that leads to obsession because now you're like, well, I'm not feeling well. I'm supposed to feel a certain way. It's your expectations are not being met. You're not feeling normal. You feel like you're going crazy. Anxiety keeps enhancing until the point where you're constantly perceiving the world as this place that is just too much to contend with. And that's why a lot of people go to psychotherapy, is that so much of them has gotten beyond them. They can't seem to juggle and contend with all of this weight and baggage. So they have to see somebody to sort it all out, to understand what's really going on. So I hope that if you're new, welcome. Please, I beg you to watch the videos on the channel. Listen to the Anxiety Project podcast, because I created this content to help you guys sort out and help provide some illumination to what's really going on within the body. Because here's the thing, trauma, which causes anxiety, produces this wide range of symptoms that's bewildering to somebody. If you don't even know what anxiety is and what anxiety can do, you're just in this unknown space of, why do I feel like this? And because you're wondering why, you're obsessing over it then at that point, and you're trying to make sense out of it. And so this creates a loop because people misinterpret these symptoms as a medical concern. They go to the doctor, they get checked out, which I highly recommend you do. But when it becomes a problem is that you're consistently going all the time. So you go, you get it checked out, the doctor says everything's fine, and then you go home, but you're still feeling not well. And so at this point, well, what's really going on? You got checked out and then it's not what you thought it was, but you're not feeling well. It's time to look at a deeper meaning, a deeper cause. And so this is what I want to talk about today. What's underneath these layers of the onion? Because anxiety then becomes a vicious loop. You're then stuck in this state of, well, I'm worrying about the symptoms, but the symptoms is caused by the worry, and it just keeps going around and around and around. So anxiety raises cortisol, it raises adrenaline, it makes the heart beat faster, it moves the blood to the limbs so that you can respond to the perceived danger. This is an ancient structure to keep you alert and awake. So what has been deemed irrelevant before is now relevant to you, right? Because it's like the snake slithered into your garden of paradise and it disrupted your map of being, and now you're like, oh my god, what is this thing? It's like reality creeping in, and now you're awakened to your mortality and your vulnerabilities. And that's that's an extreme realization, because how do you move back into unconsciousness from that? No, you don't. You actually have to then wrestle with this new notion of, well, you're vulnerable, you're not well, you're not probably not taking care of yourself, or whatever it is. You haven't dealt with the things of your past, you haven't dealt with the things of your present, your future is uncertain. This, oh my God, like, what do you do in the midst of this unknown? Okay, so you're in this unfamiliar terrain, and learning about anxiety is one thing, but also building upon a structure and introducing a structure into your life is really important, because you can't go back into unconsciousness. A lot of people do that. I used to do that. I tried to smoke weed, do drugs, alcohol, TV, Dr. Google, reassurance from family, social media, just distraction after distraction. But once we remove distractions and you're in bed at night and it's just you and your own mind, the monsters literally, they come out of the darkness and you can't sleep. And this, for me, it just seems like because you've moved all of the distractions away, you're allowing the natural course of your psyche to unravel itself. And because you haven't contended to all the dragons inside, it's like, it's so massive that people have panic at night, people can't sleep, people have insomnia. It's really something. So it's like, how do we sort out this garden? And the mind is like a garden. If it's left unattended, it grows and it becomes too much to even deal with, but then you can still deal with it. That's the thing. And that's what I'm here to say, is that I reached rock bottom in my life with health anxiety, with agoraphobia. It was really bad. And the reason why I started the anxiety project is because I couldn't believe that I could get out of it. And you can get out of it. And I'm one to say you can, believe me. And I've seen other people get out of the most horrific conditions that they've managed to, life through their way, but also they managed to wind up in. So the real question is, why isn't everybody so anxious about every part of their body and their being, and why isn't everybody constantly checking in on themselves? And that's a really good question, because we are mortal and we are vulnerable, right? And so how do we contend with that realization? Well, the thing is, many people make the appropriate sacrifices in order to serve this future self that they know is coming down the road in an hour from now, to a day from now, to a week from now, to a month, to a year, right? They know that if they make the significant sacrifices and they give back to themselves appropriately, they know the future them could thrive. And so they're tending to this garden on a day-to-day basis. And this is something I learned early on, is that meditation isn't a one-day thing, it becomes a habit. These things like giving back to yourself in ways where you are avoiding the phone, you're maybe reading more or watching videos like this one to better yourself in some way, or to shoot towards a North Star, because you've realized that that culture is not your friend. Culture is not serving you the way you put your trust in culture, and culture betrayed that trust by telling you lies and keeping you consumed and keeping you vulnerable and weak, and it's manipulating you. And then so who do you believe? So you have to turn to role models, you have to turn to a structured approach to dealing with the realities of existence. So this is what you need to ask yourself. What is the story behind the checking? Okay, what is that story exactly? How that doesn't snowball into extreme anxiety is because of how I talk to myself. I use the rational part of my brain to calm down the irrational, imagistic right hemisphere, because right hemisphere, it produces worst case scenarios, it produces imagistic representations of what's lurking out in the unknown. And the left hemisphere is for the dialogue, the story we tell ourselves. So if we calm ourselves down using the right questions, then we don't snowball so far into the chaos. We don't let the other images play themselves out and, produce a lot more anxiety than it needs to. So ask yourself, if I don't check, then what will happen? Okay, well, if I don't check, then I'll have kidney disease and then I'll die. It's like, okay, well, do I know for certain that it is kidney disease? No, I don't know for certain. Okay, did you go get it checked out? Yeah, I got it checked out once. Okay, how did that go? Doctor said it was okay. So calm down, Brad. You got it checked out. It's not that. A sign that you're spiraling into health anxiety is if you jump from one diagnosis in your mind to another. Okay, if it's not kidney disease, then it's kidney cancer. And then that's a sign, right? It's like, wait a minute, I'm jumping too far here. Calm down, take a breath, and start to pay attention to how you talk to yourself. And then ask yourself, is this who I want to be? Is this who I want to be? No, I don't want to be this way. And so then it's really important that you engage in calming strategies to help activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system, rather than your anxiety response. Okay, and understanding more about anxiety will help lessen this response. Now, I think we must look into a habit. What is a habit? Now, James Clear wrote about the cycle of a habit in Atomic Habits. He says the cycle of a habit is there's a cue, there's a craving, there's a response, and then there's a reward. So what's the cue? It could be a time of day, it could be a place, it could be a sensation, it could be a thought, right? It's it's so reflexive that you won't even know the cue, and then you feel the craving but the craving becomes so reflexive as well, and then you engage in it. So you start to check your saliva, you check your privates, you check the mole, you check the parts of your body that are not feeling well, and then you're getting some sort of reward for that. What's the reward? Well, reassurance. For me, it was this was huge. I want to know that everything's okay. I have to pay attention to it, because if I don't pay attention to it, it's going to manifest itself into something serious, and then I'm going to die. It's going to not end well for me. And so I had to keep it at the forefront. And so how do we tackle something that just becomes a habit? Well, first things first, to change your identity, because I viewed myself as a fragile, weak person who's unhealthy. I had to change my identity. And to change your identity, you have to shift your beliefs and shift your values. So let's look at values. What you pay attention to the most determines what you value. So not just mentally, but what you act out continuously determines what you value. So if you are smoking weed, spending time in Netflix, not really doing much, sitting around, playing video games, whatever you do, you're feeding the circuits of your brain a signal that is saying, well, this is what is important to me. It's providing some sort of reward. And even checking, it's providing some sort of reward. But when I started to act out a different lifestyle, when I started to meditate, started to get up early, I started to challenge my body, because I was shrinking further and further away from my fears, right? By ignoring them and by taking the easy route. And I noticed that the easy route was only making things worse. So when I decided to challenge my body and mind at the same time, body, mind, same thing, I realized that my body is capable of a lot more than I thought. But you don't discover that until you challenge the body. So when you're in a situation where panic strikes and you're feeling out of control and you're going to pass out and you're going to throw up, whatever, in that moment, you have an opportunity to stay and ride the wave of panic, or you run away into whatever's comforting, or you make a phone call, or you call an ambulance. But when you ride that wave and you stay and the panic subsides, you discover a different person behind that panic. You discover a different person outside, behind that cold shower, behind that exercise, behind that walk in the morning, or waking up early in the morning, or doing breath work, or reading a book that's a little bit more challenging than what you're accustomed to reading. And so you are pushing the limits of what your capabilities are. And this is huge because it started to shift my identity the more I did it. And at first, you're going to feel like an imposter or like it's not working. That's because your ego is trying to pull you back into what's familiar. But once you step outside of what's familiar, you then realize that you are manifesting so much of this unseen potential lurking within yourself. You might not be doing enough to build self-reliance. You have to build trust. You have to learn to say no to yourself. You have to learn to say no. And that, honestly, for me, like I talked about before on this channel, I used to cheat. I was a cheater. And I had to learn to say no to cheating or like saying no to the advances of someone else. I'd build trust in my body that I could say no. And so for you, there is some area of your life where you are lacking in that trust. Maybe you could do more with your lifestyle choices. And that's a really hard thing to confront. But also, maybe you could learn something if the checking is resulting in from trauma of your past. Maybe a loved one got sick, maybe a death of a loved one, maybe you actually got sick before and then recovered, and you're still reeling from that experience. You have to learn from the experience and shift the meaning behind it. The experience for me of my old lifestyle that was unhealthy, that taught me a lot of, well, I'm not just doing enough to support my mental health and my physical health. That's it. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't making enough sacrifices. And that's a leap of faith. Those sacrifices are leaps of faith that, hey, if I take that leap, that things could be better for me. And that's where I'm going to leave you on this video. I hope that this video has shined some sort of light on the checking. If the checking for you is persistent and it's worrisome and it's still bothering you, please, I have one-on-one coaching. We can meet privately over Skype. We can talk in person, and we can build a structured step-by-step approach and work and confront on the traumas that you could be still holding on to of the past. Rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be one of the first to know. Namaste.